Hello everybody, and welcome back to Evolving Vibes, the community for witches, pagans, spiritualists, and everybody in between. I'm so glad to have you back today, and today we're doing a special video. I literally just finished filming it today, which is actually Monday, as I'm continuing on my Halloween week or Samhain week vacation. So today what I thought I would do is something really different. And so I went to Fall River, Mass. It's really right next to where I live. And I took some videos of the Lizzie Borden house, the second home that Lizzie Borden bought after the trial and the acquittal. And I went to the graveside of Lizzie Borden, Andrew Borden, her sister, and her stepmom. And along with that, I went on a tour within the Lizzie Borden house, the one that was actually part of the double homicide. And so I just wanted to share with you some of the experiences that I had. Now, wait until the very end, because as I said, I started off this morning with just filming outside, and on a whim, I went on a tour. And I'm so glad that I did that, because I did learn a lot more than I thought I knew. And more importantly, I was able to get some pictures within a house. And there's one picture in particular that I really want to show you. It's pretty cool, and I do hope you like it. So stick around to the end to see that. But until then, let's roll on with checking out the Lizzie Borden landmarks. So I'm aimlessly just hanging out on the corners of Fall River, Mass. No, I'm not. So what you're seeing behind me, right over there, that is the Lizzie Borden house, where allegedly she took an axe and took out her stepmom and her dad. So we're going to walk around the house a little bit, and I'm probably even going to pay and go inside to get a tour going, because I've never been here my whole life, believe it or not. So to give you a little history about the house, obviously we already know about the deaths and such, but growing up, I remember living in Fall River and Swansea and never really knowing exactly where it was. And the reason being, a lot of the history sort of got buried away in generations. And the house itself, as it is, was still there, painted differently, of course, but it was actually a print shop, and the print shop was directly on the other side of it. And it wasn't until the late 90s, maybe early 2000s, I really don't remember, that it was purchased and made into a bed and breakfast and a historical site, so to speak. So we're just going to walk around a little bit, and I am going to try to get some tickets and go inside just to check it out. So this is the other side of the house, of course, and to give you some perspective, where the house is located in Fall River, it's actually on a pretty busy street, and I want to thank the municipal bus of Fall River for actually demonstrating how busy the street is. Hopefully it wasn't too loud. And right here, ironically enough, is actually the judicial system for Fall River. In other words, the municipal courts, which I have to be here on Thursday the 28th because I was summoned for jury duty. So I'm thinking going in saying I'm a gay witch, former paramedic that works in a semi-prison is probably going to get me out of jury duty, but we'll see. Anyway, I digress. Back to the Borden house. So this is still the side of the house and the side entrance, just as it was back in the day. And this is the front of the house. But I'm going to cross the street so you get a better shot of the front of the house. However, I wanted to point this out as we pan. Back there is not the original, but a reproduction of the barn Lizzie said that she was hanging out in and eating pears while she was looking for iron fish weights. So that was her alibi for the whole murder. So this right here is the very front of the Borden estate as it looked back in 1892, for the better part of it all. But I want you to take notice to the size of it and such. Although it looks really awesome, keep this in mind when we check out Maplecroft, which is where Lizzie Borden and her sister Emma moved to after the trials were all done and she rightfully got her inheritance. And this is just another angle of the Borden house. And this is just another angle of the Borden house. Now I'm just going to pan over to the right, and this building right here was attached all the way up to the house back when I was growing up. And all of this was a printing company, and I believe the house was for like storage and maybe doodads and stuff, but it was really just dormant. So we're gonna go in, and I'm gonna try to get some tickets if it's available for a tour. So let's check it out. Okay, so I thought I would do one more shot before I head on into the Lizzie Borden house for the tour. So just stand by, and I'll come back out afterwards, and we'll head out one more place that I think you're going to be really interested in. So see you in just a little bit. Hello everybody, and welcome to continuing my adventures with me as we go through Fall River, Mass. So behind me, right down here, we're going to go check out the house that Lizzie Borden and her sister moved into after the trials were all done, after they rightfully cleared their name, so to speak, and after they collected their inheritance because they weren't found to be the murderer. So let's go check out the outside of the house. We're not going to be able to go inside, of course, but it is for sale. But you do your own judgment and your own decisions when you look at this house compared to her original childhood home. And hopefully the cars going by aren't much of a distraction. But let's go check it out. So as you walk up and you pan the street, you can see that there are some pretty damn large houses in the area. This was a very desirable and stylish place in Fall River to live, actually called the Highlands. So every house you see here at one time was a mansion. And it belonged to some people or family members or the person themselves involved in a lot of ways the Fall River textile industry, as that was like a world leader back in the day. But you didn't come here to hear all that. You came here to check out this baby right here, right in front of us. This is the house known as Maplecroft that Lizzie and her sister moved into after the deaths and after the trial of her parents. So let's check out this house. They lived here until her sister passed away, and Lizzie lived here until 1927 when she actually passed away inside the house. So I'm going to do my best without trespassing to show you the house, but bear with me. So this is obviously the sunroom of the house, and check out all of that granite in those windows. Absolutely amazing. And the backyard and the yard itself isn't all that much, but check out the original fencing too. And as you look, you can see the back of the house and how wonderful it is with the stained glass and such, and that giant fireplace right there that's actually for the bedroom upstairs as well as for the deck. And you can see the stained glass on the third floor as well. But I'm going to continue walking because I'm actually in someone's driveway, and I'm sure that's not something that they want me to, one place they want me to be. As you check out the front of the house, you can see just how stately it actually is, and that chimney right in the center of the house going to various rooms, I'm sure, within a house. As I said, I've never been in here, so I really don't know that much as far as the detail of how the house looks inside. However, you can also see right there the for sale sign. This can be yours for a little bit over $1 million. And here's the part that I really love coming up to. So when you look at the stairway, you're going to see Maplecroft. That's the name of the home that Lizzie actually gave it back when she purchased it. And she actually had that stone made and placed right there with this granite stairway. Pretty grand. And this is just the other side of the house with the shots of course, the chimneys. And you can see just how grand this house is and was. And you can see someone actually planted maple trees in the front yard. So this is actually also the stable and now garage, of course. But when you look down, you'll see some of the original cobblestones that actually went directly up to the stable, i.e. garage. And I'm going to try walking towards the backyard. Hopefully I won't get busted. Look at me trespassing for you guys. Check out that blue house in the backyard. Isn't that a giant house? Gorgeous. That too was a mansion that was here when this house was here with Lizzie moving in. I'm sure some of the neighbors weren't very pleased. But this is the stable, and as we come around, this is the side of the house and that wonderful deck in the back. And you can get a sense of just how big it is, hopefully on camera, but it's really huge when you check it out in person. So this is just another shot of the neighborhood Lizzie and her sister moved into. You can see her house right here, and what we're going to do is check out this fine house, right? Is just walk the street over here, which would be surrounding the house, so you can get a sense of the opulence that was actually in the area. So this house right here is absolutely huge, right? And all of these houses are obviously big ass mansions. At least they were back in the day. Some of them still remain privately owned single resident houses, but many of them have been turned into multifamily rental properties. Okay, so that's going to end this portion of the video, checking out both Lizzie's house and Emma's house when they lived with their parents, as well as this house with Lizzie and Emma living on their own after their parents' death. The only other logical conclusion to this video is me bringing you, that's right, to the final resting place, so you can actually check out the whole Borden gravesite. So I will see you over there in just a few. Okay, so I definitely just finished up the tour of Lizzie Borden's house, or Andrew Borden's house I should say, and now I'm at the final resting place for the Borden family. Right behind me, right over here, is the cemetery that they're buried in. I'm going to turn the camera around a little bit so that you can actually see how ornate it is and such. So this is the cemetery gate for the cemetery that Lizzie Borden and the rest of her family are buried in. Now, this gate, I'm going to pan up so you can see just how actually ornate it actually is. And I'm going to move over to the center of the street in just a minute so you get a head-on view of it all. But it's absolutely impressive. So here's another view of the gate leading into the cemetery where the Bordens are. Rather impressive, don't you think? I'm back, and guess what? We're meeting in a cemetery yet again. So, behind me right over here are the final resting places for Andrew Borden, Lizzie Borden, Emma, and the rest of the family. So we're going to take a walk on over there and check it out. So as I said earlier, this is a rather large cemetery, and it was rather exclusive back in its day. So getting a plot here meant that you were affluent, and as you can tell by a lot of the monuments, they were. So the Bordens were an actual big name in the city of Fall River. They dealt with textiles industry and all of that. So Andrew Borden created his own wealth in a lot of different ways that I won't get into in a video, but let's walk over to his grave. So here is the memorial for Andrew J. Borden. So Andrew Jackson Borden died in 1892. We already know why. His first wife, Sarah, who died in 1863, and then his second wife, Abby Durfee, who's also a big name in Fall River, who also died in 1892. Go figure. And on the other side of the memorial, so the children of Andrew J. and Sarah Borden would be Alice, who was an infant when she died. She was only 2 years old, a toddler. Lisbeth, also known as Lizzie, who died in 1927, and Emma, who died in 1927 also. Now, fun fact for you, Lisbeth and Emma were 9 years apart in age, and Lisbeth and Emma died literally 9 days apart from each other. And here are the grave markers for the Bordens. So panning off to the left, you're going to see Alice, who was 2 years old when she died. And then you'll see Sarah, Andrew's first wife, who passed away. Then you'll see Andrew J. and you'll see Abby. husband and wife, his second wife. Now, fun fact for you, which you may not know or maybe haven't heard before. So after the initial autopsy was done, a second order was received, and so the bodies had to be dug up and the heads removed from the bodies, and the heads of both Abby as well as Andrew were sent over to Harvard, where they were boiled down so the skulls were just exposed. The damage was assessed from that standpoint, and those skulls were actually used during the trial. So after the trial was done, they did return the skulls back to the appropriate graves. However, they did not bury them inside the coffin. They buried them on top of the coffin. So the skulls are still not attached to the bodies for eternity inside these two graves. Now, back on over here, overseeing them both is Emma and Lizzie's grave. So to start off with, this is Emma's grave, and she died in 1927, as well as Lisbeth. Here she lies, resting in peace, with her sister, again not dying within 9 days of each other. And just to twist this around so you can actually see the irony, they're basically still overseeing, for eternity, the graves of both Abby as well as Andrew. So an interesting twist of fate, if you will. And as I back up, I'm just going to show you how it actually looks here in the Fall River. And that is it, folks. That is the grave and grave site of the Bordens. So that was pretty cool, wasn't it? So some of the things that I actually learned from doing the guided tour, and again, I am so glad I did. The tour guide was absolutely amazing, and just being inside the house was an experience. And I will tell you this, from my own standpoint, I could sense only one presence in that house, and I'm sure it was Andrew Borden, because whenever the tour guide would talk poorly about Andrew Borden, you could feel just anger and hatred developing, and I could just feel the sense of the room change. And I definitely am convinced that Andrew Borden still stays there. All that being said, some of the things that I learned about Lizzie Borden that I did not know until after I shot all the footage, so I do want to repair some of the things that I might have said beforehand, is number one, after she was acquitted, her sister and her, Emma and Shay, moved into this really big house in the Highlands. It was a mansion, of course, and you saw the footage of that. However, she named it Maplecroft, and she actually had Maplecroft put on the front stairs, as you saw. Now, I didn't know this when I was talking about that, but that was a huge social faux pas back in the day. So by Victorian standards, if you were going to name property, it had to be up in Newport or someplace like that where it was worth millions upon millions of dollars. All that being said, they thought it was really conceited of her to name that property, and she began being shunned by the local wealth. Along with that, she actually befriended an actress, and they were very, very close. Some would even suspect that they might have had a relationship, but who cares? But long story short, she would have parties where there would be talent coming in, both actresses and actors and that sort of thing. And that was another big social faux pas for the elite, to be commingling with that type of individual, which back in that day would be like commingling with rock stars and doing drugs and blah, 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 even though it was simply just tea parties and dinner parties and all that sort of thing. Now, a couple other things that I did not know that I learned about the tour is that there seemed to be almost a sense that there were a lot of people involved in it. Part of that being Lizzie Borden's uncle, who his sister was Lizzie Borden's biological mom. She had passed away quite a few years ago, and Andrew Borden remarried. But John Morse, Lizzie Borden's uncle, had come unannounced the night before, and literally unannounced, just knocked at the door and was put up in one of the guest rooms. The guest room, incidentally, where Abby Borden was killed. Along with that, the family doctor before Lizzie Borden actually spoke with the police, had given her 6 milligrams of morphine to calm her nerves. And that made her really sort of dumbed down, because back by any standard, really, she was considered a genius. She self-taught herself various languages. She was well-read, and she was really ahead of her time from Victorian female standpoints. So all through her incarceration for 9 months, the doctor also made sure that the jail she stood in, Taunton, she was able to wear her own clothing. She was delivered home-cooked meals, and she received 6 milligrams of morphine per day to help her get through the ordeal. So that was a little bit suspect as well. Equally so, Emma, for the very first time, had taken a trip, excuse me, to Fairhaven, which was quite the distance considering horse and carriage, to a seamstress that she actually never went to before, to actually have sizes of dresses made and to hang out with some friends as well. And it just seemed awfully suspect by most that that would have actually happened the day of, or the week of, not week, the day of the murders. So there's a lot that goes along with that. Now, a couple of things that I learned too, and it'll be more relative now since you actually saw the video of Maplecroft. So the seamstress that actually worked with the Borden sisters usually was outside of Fall River. And she was a big proponent of Lizzie Borden, and she testified during court on her behalf. After the acquittal, she suddenly, I shouldn't say suddenly, Lizzie Borden bought the mansion next to her mansion and gave it to her. And so she lived next to Lizzie Borden in her very own mansion bought by Lizzie Borden. Another player in all of this was Bridget, the housemaid. Now, Andrew Borden was really kind of a dick in a lot of different ways, but he had taken his 2 daughters, Lizzie and Emma, off the will, and had left everything to Abby. Back in that time period, the Victorian time period, the only way a female could have money, i.e. her own bank account, was if her father signed off on it or her husband did. If neither one of those two survived, then they could have their own bank account and their own personal means of support. So that kind of tells you something right there with Abby dying and then the father dying. But I digress just a little bit. So Andrew used to call Bridget Maggie rather than by her real name. And the reason for that is back in that time period, a Maggie or Maggie was a female racial slur for Irish immigrants. So every time he called her, anytime he spoke with her, he would actually call her this racial slur, Maggie. And obviously I would actually hate that if someone started doing that to me with other things. But long story short, she too testified for Lizzie. And after the acquittal, she sort of fell off the map for 10 years. Flash forward 10 years later, she's actually living in Montana on a horse ranch with her husband that, when she met him, was just as destitute as she was. How the hell did she get the horse ranch? That's right, Lizzie Borden bought it for her. And she lived out the rest of her life, happily ever after, on a horse ranch with her husband. And now for a piece of Fall River history, after the acquittal, when she was living in Maplecroft, she lived there with her sister until there was a falling out, and her sister moved out, and they never really spoke to her ever again. However, all through her time living in Maplecroft and living in Fall River. So one of the other things about Lizzie Borden, after the acquittal and everything else, she was quite the philanthropist, to the point of she was one of the biggest philanthropists in Fall River. She started funds for a lot of different types of organizations, but along with that, she and close friends would wrap every holiday season hundreds upon hundreds of gifts and collect clothes and do all of these type of drives to help out immigrant children and immigrant families that may not have the money or funds for any holiday celebration. And she would do that for Christmas, for Thanksgiving, for Easter, all through the holiday seasons or any holiday that would be celebrated. Along with that, and this was something that was really near and dear to my heart, she was a huge animal rights supporter. I said animal rights, I know, right? But she helped maintain a fund for what was called the Fall River Animal Rescue League. When she passed, she actually had a trust fund created for it that was eternal. And all that being said, that has now turned into the Faxon Animal Shelter in Fall River. And they're still drawing funds from the donations that Lizzie Borden made. The last piece of information that I learned today that I did not know was she was a big women's suffrage movement supporter. And she really went out for the cause and supported the women's right to vote as well as equality. And she lived long enough to actually be able to vote in elections. And so there's a lot about Lizzie Borden that I didn't know. Obviously, if she did commit a double homicide, I still don't condone that. I mean, I am a witch, but I don't condone double homicides. I don't condone single homicide. But all that being said, after all that was done, it does seem like she built off of that, if that makes any sense whatsoever. But long story short, I do hope you enjoyed this video. I look forward to seeing you in the next video. And if you haven't already, please be sure, like, subscribe, leave me a comment, and let me know what you think. And as always, be safe, be well, and be blessed. So, before we completely end this video, one more thing I want to show you and bring forward to you is one of the last pictures I took inside of the Lizzie Borden murder house, if you will. So I went down to the basement and I was introduced to the washing area. You're going to see like this little round basin, and that's actually where they would actually do laundry, and they would swirl it around with almost like an oar, a paddle. But I was told to take pictures of that whole area, and I actually took a picture of the basin itself, and I want you to pay close attention to the back wall. Now, as I said earlier, I felt a strong presence of Andrew Borden in the house, and I could actually feel the anger and such when the tour guide was really talking bad about him. And I didn't know this fact until after I started taking pictures. I guess there was a psychic medium in there probably around 2 months ago now, I'm guessing, from what I heard. And she was in the basement, and she was using a spirit box. And on it, she was asking if Andrew Borden was in the house, and she got the response, yes. And she actually asked for some proof, or for him to prove that it was him. And he actually, in the spirit box, replied with, "This is my house." And so I took a picture of that whole area because that's where she actually was when this exchange took place. And let me know what you think you see in the picture itself. Spoiler alert for you, I see, and others have seen, a face. Now, I showed this and talked to the tour guide about it, and she sort of laughed. She's like, yeah, that is something that we don't tell people unless they bring it up. But this face has been in this wall as long as we can remember. We've tried sandblasting it, we've sanded it, we repainted it over and over and over again, yet that face continues to come back. And when you look at it, and you look at it more closely, it's going to appear to look a bit like Andrew Borden from pictures that I saw, and just the facial outline itself. But that's just me. So I wanted to leave all you guys with that. I do hope you enjoy the video, and I do hope you enjoy the pictures I got, and I will see you next time. So now for sure, be safe, be well, and be blessed.